I'm on a mission. Yes, on a mission to find how people keep well. What does it really mean to keep well? We all know why we have to keep well, don't we? How do you keep well? Today's fast-paced world means we often get caught up with the daily grind. We struggle to develop or maintain practices that help to maintain our well-being. It's very easy to feel overwhelmed by the constant demands and pressure. It's so easy to get distracted, isn't it? And end up doing exactly what we know we shouldn't be doing. Having easy to digest information to guide and remind you to keep well can make a world of difference. Consider me to be your dedicated well-being partner, cheering you to achieve big dreams and goals, which is only possible by keeping yourself well, living a happy, healthy, and meaningful life. Hello friends, and welcome to this week's episode of How Do You Keep Well podcast. Thank you very much for taking time to listen to this and for your support as well. It means a lot to me. But my greatest joy is seeing the changes that are taking place in you. On this podcast, I'll be sharing stories, scientific insights, and practical tips to inspire and motivate you to be the best version of your healthy self. I'm Dr. Jaye. I'll be your host, and I'm cheering you on this exciting journey to be happier, healthier, and living a more meaningful life. Why don't you do me a favor by getting yourself ready, however you are, and definitely taking on some very important learning points from today's episode. Make sure you subscribe and share any insights you have learned with your friends and family, so together we can keep on keeping well. So let's dive straight into today's episode. So my question is, what is it about movement and living a happy, healthy, and well life? Okay, so deep in your heart and feel this is the right thing, isn't it? But we all struggle to make this happen in everyday life. We hear all about it everywhere we go. Movement is medicine, food is medicine, sleep is medicine. I personally believe, and I strongly believe, that as humans we are created to move, to interact with nature, and rest is this life cycle. More and more, there is much pressure around us to finish tasks, whether that is work or personal or family related. Obviously, for me, there is the love I have for sharing this insight. So I always feel the need to finish up. So that keeps me seated for sometimes quite a few hours. And there's this natural urge that makes us all focus on finishing the tasks first before we look after ourselves. And to be honest with you, I personally find it quite upsetting when people don't see movement as a form of self-care, especially as you approach midlife or maybe even transitions in life. One story I enjoy talking about is one of my elderly clients who has a number of medical conditions, but she was so desperate to move. She wasn't too sure if this was going to cause any further damage if she walked up and down, just up and down her stairs. Of course, you know me well. I wanted to scream, yes, you can do it. But I had to control myself and had to be very professional about it. I always get so excited when I see my elderly clients wanting and willing to do activities. It makes my heart melt with joy. And obviously for every one of us, through the day, we feel we're moving around at work, we're doing tasks at home, and we feel this is exercise. My husband always keeps saying it, oh, Jaye, I exercise all the time. I'm standing doing surgery all day, walking around the wards. And obviously by the time you finish work or maybe looking after everyone, you feel you deserve some rest, right? Yes, I get it. I really get it. And I've got you. Or maybe yours is different. You have an illness or you are in pain or you feel fatigued, you feel physically exhausted, and you struggle to actually move. to be honest with you, this is completely understandable and it's perfectly normal to delay or not want to do any leisurely movement activity. Again, I've got you and I get you. So I would like to share quite a personal story of when I found it difficult to do my exercise routine. And this happened this year, yes, 2024. Now, my personal routine is doing a brisk walk for 150 minutes. Now, just a very quick aside, I use minutes of brisk walking rather than actual steps. Obviously, some people like to do 10,000 steps, but I tend to prefer using minutes to quantify my walking. It gives me a better idea of the effectiveness of that particular movement activity. So guess what? January this year, my total minutes for brisk walking went down to 396 minutes. I could even make it to 4 more minutes to get to 400 minutes. Can you believe that? I was so disappointed. Now, this for me is different. My previous 3 months, and in fact, throughout 2023, I consistently clocked above and beyond 600 to 700 minutes. Mind you, my target is really 600 minutes of brisk walking every month. And I do this spread over 3 days. I do 150 minutes per week, spread over 3 days usually. So back to my story. Sorry for the little digression. I woke up one morning and I struggled to go down the stairs. Tying up my shoelaces was an effort. I suffered. I was in so much discomfort. I couldn't just understand it. Like going down the stairs, how can I struggle going down the stairs? I was in pain. I felt so weak. I couldn't put my finger on it. I really could. Sometimes you do a new activity like maybe a Pilates class or something and you feel really achy the next day. I hadn't done anything at all to feel that way. I was so disappointed. And to be honest, it took me quite some days to recover from this. The only reason I could pinpoint was possibly I had a low vitamin D level and obviously I hadn't done any blood tests. So I just began to feel better kind of randomly again when I started taking my vitamin D supplements. I actually found this period of time quite profound. The fact that I was in so much pain and it stopped me from doing my exercise. I mean, it didn't stop me from doing everything else. I was still looking after my daughters and my family. But the fact that it stopped me from doing things was actually quite a very painful moment for me. And I guess I was missing my quick boosts of serotonin as well from missing walking. I missed my walking so much. The moment I went back into it again, I was so full of gratitude to God for His healing power. I don't take it for granted anymore that I'm able to walk down the street, down my road, the safety. And I'm always so grateful for this. And I definitely don't take it for granted anymore. So I completely get it when there are moments in life when moving can be difficult. Let's face it, as we certainly age, a number of physical changes begin to happen in our body. Our muscle bulk and the strength reduces. Our joints begin to experience wear and tear. Unfortunately, this is going to happen. And like I always use this example, if you use or wear a shoe for 50 years, obviously that shoe will become worn. And that's what happens to our joint. It carries the weight of our body. Our bones becomes less dense. And this is as a result of a number of metabolic or hormonal or even lifestyle factors. Now, the lifestyle factors definitely is not about fashion. It's about the food we eat. It's about how we stimulate our muscles, and stimulating the muscles involves stretching the muscles, strengthening the muscles, toning it up, making it more flexible. So today, and in this episode in particular, what I'm bringing to you is definitely to inspire and empower you on 3 things. The first thing is that it is possible to start again if you've had a pause, or maybe you've never had an opportunity to even start moving intentionally. Secondly, movement is an important tool to delay the aging process. Honestly, it is mind-blowing. And thirdly, the positive impact of movement is seen on our well-being, the totality of our well-being, our physical, emotional, and intellectual well-being. Okay. Now, first of all, the question you need to ask yourself is, if you have had a pause from moving or maybe from any leisurely movement activity, or maybe you've never even started anything intentionally, you have to ask yourself, what is actually stopping me? And this obviously are blocks. Some people are just addicted, completely addicted. And I have to be honest with you. Some people are addicted to their bed. They're addicted to work. They're addicted to sleeping. They're addicted to the screen. It's incredible. The generation we have is full of addiction for all sorts of reasons. So addiction is a block. Procrastination is another block. And to be honest, procrastination is the excuse your brain gives to itself to protect it from doing any work that it senses danger from, particularly when you're being forced to move out of your comfort zone. It's actually a kind of protection for the brain. So procrastination is a block. Trauma, and this one is a bit of a sensitive one. And trauma can be in the form of physical trauma or emotional trauma. So physical trauma in terms of perception of not being physically able to move, which is in actual fact not true. There is some kind of movement for absolutely everybody in the world, irregardless. Okay, we'll come to that in a moment. Then there is that aspect of emotional trauma. Emotional trauma can be a big block. Okay, so obviously for me as a doctor, sometimes when I dig deep into some of this trauma, I find it quite emotional myself, to be honest with you. And the other day, someone was talking about not wanting to go to the gym because people will be looking at them, or not even able to wear or find a good outfit to be able to go out. Honestly, these things can be almost like a stronghold. And childhood trauma as well, something somebody said to them when they were younger makes them feel like hiding away. There's also the psychological block, just that inability to see the bigger picture, the stigma, the mindset kind of looks or sounds really bigger than the benefits that you are going to achieve. Now, honestly, these blocks can be triggers, big triggers. Once you are exposed to any of this situation, it sets up a whole cascade of pathways within your body system, and it prevents you from trying. You may have heard of neuroplasticity, where you develop new pathways in the brain when learning new experiences. But to be honest with you, forget about the new pathways for the moment. The old pathways, those kind of pathways that some people have walked on in the garden, they have become like proper roads. The old pathways in the brain are incredibly strong. They're like ancient pathways. Those circuits are like imprinted. They form a proper highway, so that when there is a tiny trigger, whether it's from any of the senses, your sight, your smell, how you feel, your touch, your hearing, these are very tiny sensory triggers. Even the way someone looks at you, and it just reminds people of the shame, and it goes through these ancient pathways in the brain, and that's it. It blocks them completely. So the first battle of the mind is recognizing the triggers and the old circuits that have stopped you. And that way you can begin to empower yourself. Actually, recognizing it is actually quite empowering, because once you become self-aware, then that is your first step to understanding that there is a new pathway possible and you can develop a new pathway. Honestly speaking, it's never easy to start again, but the benefits certainly outweigh the risks. The benefits will be useful not just for now, but for your future self. So trust me, try again. It is definitely worth it. So like I already mentioned before, my personal routine is Brisk walking is my go-to form of whatever you call it, whether it's cardiovascular or aerobic or endurance exercise. I remember those endurance walks when I was in my secondary school. I loved it. Oh my goodness. I loved endurance walks. On Saturday morning, we went out every Saturday morning and I absolutely loved this endurance walk. And I still do it now. It's incredible to see how those little activities in my teenage years are the things I'm actually going back to now. And so if you have children, encourage them to go out on walks or involve them in whatever activity you're doing. So mine is brisk walking, and I do this at least, my goal is 600 minutes every month. I break this down into 30 minutes during the weekday and then an hour at the weekend. And obviously, if I have any other time or opportunity during the week, I would do a brisk walk, whether that is just picking my kids up from their dance class or going down into shops. And this all add up, definitely. I have a way of recording this on my phone and I love looking at it just to have a bit of a count back on how many minutes I've done the month. Now, the next one for my strength training, and some people call it resistance exercise. I like it as strength because it makes me feel strong. And for me, it's my Pilates class. I do that weekly with my teacher. I enjoy gardening. I enjoy lifting my shopping, my washing, and doing some planks. But I must confess, to be honest with you, I need to tighten this up a little bit, and I'm looking forward to this journey. Hopefully, one of these days, I will get on some very interesting guests who actually have gone far when it comes to strength training. So look out for this. So generally, I do some exercises after my walking to help my flexibility and balance. So this is my own personal strategy for keeping active and keeping well. I like to keep my life simple, and this is what I always encourage. Being well can be simple, and it involves everyday activities. You don't have to break the bank. Obviously, this is going to look different for everyone, and we all have different levels of intensity that we can cope with. So to summarize, 3 things to have in your movement pillar: aerobics, strengthening, and flexibility exercises. And if you want to be a star student, add in some balance exercise. So have these 3 things in mind when you start planning to become more active. Now, hang on a moment. Some people like to research which activity is good for you. And whilst researching, they're sitting down for hours. You hear all sorts of things about the type of your body and the kind of exercise to do. Now, a lot of this can lead to decision fatigue. Start with the easiest one you can do and remain consistent with it. I'll just quickly bring in one quick word about certain types of exercises, especially when you start approaching your midlife. So let's use the example of high intensity interval training, HIIT. Look, I'm no expert at this, but I look at it and my understanding of HIIT is that it involves some form of high intensity activity followed by a medium intensity activity and then a cooling down period. This is fabulous because you are able to combine various activities into a number of minutes. So, for instance, some people will do aerobic exercises, so sprinting, walking, jumping, and then rest. Or some activities may involve some aerobics and some strength training. So there's a lot packed into the number of minutes. But you need to be able to do this consistently over a period of time to reap the benefits. But also you need to consider the impact of overtraining or fatigue or muscle injury that can affect your progress. So for instance, if you don't have enough time to recover well after a training program, this can cause stress hormones to go high. And it is really a counterintuitive impact to what you are trying to achieve in your fitness journey. So my word for you is choose wisely what activity you want to go. Definitely make it simple. Try to go slow and gradually build it up from there. Okay? So this next segment, I'm just going to talk about what is the science behind movement. Definitely movement is a science. I like this quote I apparently was first by Aristotle. Movement is life. What do you think? Movement is life. Let's swap it around. Life is movement. And I really wonder what made him say this in the first instance. There are other quotes. Movement is life and stillness is death. The essence of life is movement. I think this helps you to see the central role movement plays in our life. One other quote that struck me was made by a physician who was said to be a doctor to the kings of Poland, Osko. Movement can replace all medicines, but no medicine is able to replace movement. Wow, wow, wow. Isn't that profound? So really, the science behind movement is based on its undeniable impact on our health span and lifespan. Yeah, have a moment to think about that. Let me break this down. There is solid scientific evidence based on a number of trials that shows the positive influence of movement on life. That is both our health span and our lifespan. So, for instance, let's look at the health span. Chronic medical condition has increased in prevalence over the last few years. Now, having a regular activity, moving activity that you do, physical activity that you do, can not only prevent these chronic medical conditions, it can treat it, and in some cases, it can reverse it. Now, medical conditions, chronic medical conditions, mainly are due to metabolic causes, and I know that sometimes they be confusing, but I'll break it down, and can be due to chronic inflammation in our body system. And these two are mainly due to our lifestyle practices, what we eat, how we move, how we manage stress, how we sleep. And these chronic medical conditions are what we commonly known as hypertension, high cholesterol, diabetes, obesity, and cancer. Now, the mere act of moving improves the way our heart and lungs work. It improves the quality and the quantity of our muscle mass and how they respond to hormones such as insulin. Movement is a natural anti-inflammatory drug because it disrupts the inflammation process that causes all these metabolic problems. Now, mind you, metabolic problems include problems like polycystic ovaries. Movement strengthens the immune system. Now, each of these specific benefits have several pathways in the body, and it is incredible to see how far-reaching the impact of movement is on these pathways in the body. So next, let's go to lifespan. I honestly have been so completely fascinated by this topic, our lifespan. And in particular, when I was reading about the trials which show the impact of movement on our lifespan. For example, we know that people who are physically active live longer. There was a study done in the late 1980s, so 1989, and this study was of middle-aged healthy participants. They were followed up for 8 years, and those in the lowest level of physical fitness, and this was determined by using an exercise treadmill, they had a higher chance of dying from any cause than those in the top category of physical fitness. Isn't that mind-blowing? Okay, hang on. So one may argue that we are already living longer and older already. We all know this from research papers. It's obvious that people are living longer compared to generations before us. But hang on a minute. How can moving in our 30s, 40s, and 50s have a positive impact on our later years? In my opinion, it does so in several ways. But I will highlight these 3 pertinent ones. Moving in our midlife has an impact on our brain health, especially in the latter years. It has an impact on the quality of our life, and it has an impact on our emotional and mental well-being. One of the biggest hurdles for people, generally wherever you're from, particularly when we approach midlife, is our aging parents. One of the biggest hurdles when we approach midlife, is our aging parents. I don't know about you. My mom is still alive and she's in her 80s. Now, taking time out of work or other caring responsibilities to look after our aging parents can cause a lot of problems, both at work and even within the family. Some people have a lot of family squabbles, trying to push it to the other person that it's your turn to take mom to the hospital today. There's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of disillusionment. Now, flip that coin over to you in your old age. Thanks to the medical advancements we now have that helps us to detect diseases early and all the treatments that we have to prolong life. Do you ever consider your care becoming an issue for your children? Okay, so you need to start taking action now. It is absolutely 100% important to start sowing seeds of healthy habits into your midlife, and this will give you the advantage of aging gracefully. So before I go deep into the science behind the impact of movement on our brain health, I will quickly mention the impact on the quality of life and the impact on our mental health. So a number of studies have shown that adults who are intentional about moving and performing strengthening exercise for their body, they experience better physical well-being. In particular, what we find is that their muscle function and strength is better. Now, having a strong muscle, a healthy muscle, these are the things that help maintain independency and self-sufficiency in old age. Now, not only does this help, but also when you go down to like the really deeper details, when it comes to genetic aging, there's something called the telomeres. And as we all get older, the telomeres become shorter. Now, the telomeres are like the protein found on our DNA. That's the genetic basis of our life. And these are located at both ends of each chromosome of our DNA. The telomeres have an important function that encodes our life. They're essential in maintaining the data contained in our DNA. And you may know this from biology. There's cell division that happens all the time. And when cell division happens, there is a natural loss of tiny amounts of these telomeres. It's a natural biological process. Now, as these telomeres begin to shorten, then the signal for aging or cell death occurs. This is where physical activity makes a difference. Being physically active helps to lengthen these telomeres. Now, if you want further information about this, there'll be a link to the research at the end of the podcast, in my podcast notes. Now, this is just genetic aging. There's also immune aging. I personally just enjoy learning about this field, and I'm always so eager to teach people what I have learned. Now, to be honest with you, I think some people have an immune age of a 90-year-old in their 40s because they are lacking in physical activities. When people are physically active, their body releases important chemicals or metabolites that helps them to manage their internal defense system. Okay, you hold the thoughts, and I hope you are going along with me. So really, in summary, being physically active lengthens the lifespan, even from a genetic point of view. I mean, I haven't even touched base on the impact on our mental well-being, but again, some very interesting research articles actually went down to this, almost like the molecular and the chemical basis. And they found that some specific hormones released in the muscles during exercises are actually linked to our mental health. So this thing is true, guys. Being physically active has an impact on our lifespan, on our mental well-being, and our physical well-being, both for now and for the future. So this is my most interesting bit, okay? So hang in there whilst I talk about the impact of movement on our brain. Or maybe I should say it this way, the impact of movement on our intellectual well-being. In other words, your brain power. Now, this may be very relevant for women, especially in the premenopausal years, but also for men. We know our brain controls and coordinates our everyday movement. Some we don't even have absolutely no awareness that is happening. There is a lot of strong evidence to show that leisure time movement, that is the movement you do intentionally, or physical activities done intentionally, can counteract the negative consequences of sedentary lifestyle. Honestly, a sedentary lifestyle can be a risk factor to your brain. The wear and tear of the brain from sitting too much can be prevented. So let's think of problems. What does it mean for the brain to go through wear and tear? Basically, problems like dementia, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis. And to be honest, these are devastating conditions. And you can begin to work on preventing this whilst in your midlife. What you really want in midlife and beyond is a sound mind in a sound body. And studies after studies confirm that being active enhances our cognitive function, our memory. Wait for this, it has analgesic effects. So that means it actually relieves pain. That's one of the reasons why graded exercise is a therapy for chronic fatigue. And also studies confirm the antidepressant effects of moving more. It honestly gives a general sense of being well. Now, I read the story of one of the Greek physicians, Herophilus, who was 335 to 280 years before Christ. And he was explaining the anatomy of the brain and nerves through the dissection of human cadavers. I was one of those that did a human cadaveric dissection in medical school. I don't think they do that anymore. He discovered there are two types of nerves. There is the motor nerves. So these are nerves connected to muscles. And there are sensory nerves. These are nerves that travel to organs and they are in charge of the way we feel. Even at that time, several years ago, before Christ, physical activity and eating a balanced diet, he believed were essential for keeping a healthy body and a good mind. So being physically active is not a new thing. Now, here is the science behind how exercise affects our intellectual functions. So are you ready for this? Grab yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or maybe green tea or maybe a green smoothie. I've been enjoying some of my green smoothies lately. Let's think of two types of exercise. There's the resistance exercises and there's the endurance exercises. So resistance training is what I call my strength training. And it involves activities that tones up or strengthens the muscle. Remember what I talk about, making your muscle strong. So it's about using things like a body weight or doing planks or lifting weights. And the second one, endurance exercises. So you can call it a cardiac, aerobic, cardiovascular exercises. And these are the things that make your heart beat faster when you run and your heart start beating quick. Or it increases your breathing rate. So walking, running, jumping, or even skipping a rope or swimming or cycling. Now, technically, these two activities, that is both the resistance and the endurance exercises, they are technically different, but both of them promote muscle formation and they cause the muscles to release chemicals. All sorts of chemicals. Honestly, there's one called irisin. This is the sport hormone. There's also the myokines. These are like the brain-derived neurotropic factors, or what we call the BDNF, or even metabolites like lactates. They release all these chemicals and metabolites, the muscles release them into the bloodstream. And these are the little chemicals that can cross the blood-brain barrier right at the tiniest capillaries, and they influence how the brain functions. So imagine yourself as you squeeze those muscles when you exercise or when you strengthen it. Those muscles release these powerful chemicals that go to the brain, and they influence how your brain works. So in particular, they influence how nerves, we talked about the sensory nerves, they influence how they talk to each other. And this is what they call neurotransmission in various parts of the brain. Now, neurotransmission triggers pathways that affect the way our genes are expressed. You remember we talked about telomeres earlier on. Now, this is where you begin to see the benefits of exercise. When these chemicals are released and they affect how the nerves talk to each other in the brain, you will find that your brain is able to lay new pathways easily. New pathways. So your brain learning capacity is better. There are new pathways laid. And this is what is called neuroplasticity. I'll say that again. Neuroplasticity. And this translates into better memory, better attention span, better executive functioning, and reasoning. It improves your creativity, your balance, even to things like your performance, and even to things like your balance or your coordination. So you may find that if you pay attention to your physical activity, you are able to dance better. Certainly, I want to keep dancing to my old age. To take a little bit of a break, now imagine a very high-tech gadget that you use. Okay, let's use the example of a car, or maybe some particular keys on your keyboard that you use a lot. You will notice that those ones are fading away. But let's look at a car. When you are given the gift of a car right from when you are born, and they say you have to use this car forever whilst you're on earth. I mean, cars are a complex piece of engineering masterclass or success, aren't they? Now, after a while of using this, your car gift, you are able to master certain functions in the car because you use it every day. But you know what? If you don't service it, at some point, this car is just going to disappear. Servicing it regularly, changing its oil can make an old car feel new on the inside, even though the outward part is looking old. That's what happens with our muscles. It's such a complex, well-designed structure that maintains our body. And it adapts to various functions that we place emphasis on. So servicing it regularly creates a longevity pattern, especially from the inside. It's an inside-out work. So today, I have talked about the positive impact of moving more and the impact it has on our health span and lifespan in particular. And we've looked at the benefits on our physical and mental health and also on our brain health. So my dears, you have no excuse now, right? If you do not have any planned leisure activity or you have taken a break from this, maybe due to the stresses of life, or perhaps you have just become completely oblivious to the central role it plays, here's a gentle push for you. Here's a wake-up call. Evelyn, Lola, Peter, Chiboy, remember, I am your one and only healthy habit cheerleader. I would always be cheering you on to live an intentionally well life that will benefit you for years to come. So here are my 3 acts, and here are my takeaways from this episode. First of all, remember there are 3 aspects to develop. So your aerobic, or sometimes called your endurance, your strengthening or your resistance work, and your balance. And here are simple suggestions for you. 3 simple suggestions. Make it structured. So deliberately start with the easiest activity you could do. Deliberately start with one activity, and once you've managed to figure out which one it is, then make sure you are planning it. Make it planned, otherwise it will never happen. Deliberately decide on when and where you will start and one specific thing to do. The next thing is make it repetitive. Plan never to miss twice. Once you start, you've started. Think of the intensity of the exercise, the duration you want to do it for, and how frequently you want to do it. Remember, the higher the volume, the better the benefits. Okay, I have a challenge for you this week. Why don't you join me to do 150 minutes of brisk steps every week? Maybe for this month of March. Do one strengthening exercise twice a week. And try to stand on one foot whilst cleaning your teeth twice a day. Oh, yes, we will continue from here in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening. And in particular, I just really want to appreciate you from the depths of my heart. Thank you for all your feedbacks on my other episode. It keeps me going. It keeps it going. Please don't forget to leave your remarks publicly as well. Please keep them coming in. I look forward to hearing your good news. Yes, your good news soon. And you know what that is. So I would like you to share, to subscribe, and to like this podcast to push this up the ranks so more people can listen to it and be helped. So remember, midlife is for living life well. Keep on keeping well and have a great week all. Bye.